The Fort Worth Stockyards, where the heritage is rich. Come join us for some history on the bricks. Welcome to History on the Bricks. Here we are again, and we're excited. This is our second podcast for History on the Bricks. You'll be able to find this podcast on the Jim Austin channel on YouTube.
And on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and
Apple Podcast.
And Facebook and Twitter.
Facebook page called History on the Bricks.
Yeah.
So we thank you for joining us again. Right now we're going to talk a little bit about the Cowtown Opry that is located in the Fort Worth Stockyards on the steps of the Livestock Exchange Building. This is Devin Dawson, my co-host, and she's also the
artistic
director of the Cowtown Opry. So, I don't know, a lot of people would know that the official music of Texas is Western swing.
Yes, indeed.
And that is her area of expertise. But Western music is also music about cowboys, the cowboy lifestyle. It's not Western music is not country music. It should never be confused.
But it is more rural than some country music.
True. So, Devin, what did Roy Rogers say about Western and country?
Oh, yeah. People come up to the king of the cowboys, Roy Rogers, who, of course, helped to establish the initial 20th century understanding of Western music. He helped to develop it through his efforts in film and on the radio and recordings. But anyway, they would ask him, well, what's the difference between country and Western? And he would say, in country music, the guy's singing about his neighbor's wife, and in Western music, he's singing about his neighbor's horse.
So it's all about the land, the livestock, the mesas, the deserts,
adventure,
Texas,
love of the land,
cowboys, cowgirls,
yeah,
and romance.
Yeah, there's always the romance, but there's something romantic about a person riding a horse. Something grand about that. It's just meant to be.
Always.
So it's of the stuff of legends. So it's not always about Western music has a lot of pedigree to it. I mean, it's not like you can say one thing makes it a Western song. But like you can find Western music examples in all kinds of artists' repertoire. Like I found one Western song in Carl Perkins' repertoire, and I found another one in Trisha Yearwood. And one of those is a more rockabilly 50s star, the other is a more contemporary country star. So it just depends on what the subject matter is. If it includes Western style yodeling, it can certainly come into that. Now that's a whole thing too.
That's a whole other show right there.
Yeah.
Another arm of Western entertainment is also cowboy poetry. During the cattle drive era, the cowboys, for entertainment, would sit around the fire and tell stories. And if they could put the stories to rhyme and meter, it was easier for them to understand it. Some of the stories were true, a few, but they always had these colorful stories, and so they started putting them to rhyme and meter, and then they were passed along from cowboy to cowboy, from cow camp to cow camp, and that's how cowboy poetry got its start.
Yeah.
So the Cowtown Opry mentors adults and children, and they pass along and perpetuate our Western culture through music. So, Devin, do you have a song you could share with us?
Well, there's several kinds of Western music, and I've sort of specialized in teaching adults and kids to explore each of these. So our Cowtown Opry shows, like the first Sunday of the month is Western Swing, second Sunday of the month is the kids that are under 18 years old, and they're doing all the different kinds. But the third Sunday of the month is, and by the way, they're called the Buckaroos. And the third Sunday of the month is Old West and New West. So that would be your old folk songs from the previous to the 20th century, before the era of film and radio and recordings, and then our contemporary writings, those of songs we've written today. And then there's a fourth Sunday, we celebrate the songs of the silver screen, so that would be the A Westerns and the B Westerns. And that would be people like Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Tex Ritter, Herb Jeffries, and also A-listing films that maybe like Calamity Jane or Paint Your Wagon, things that were musical, Annie Get Your Gun. And the difference between an A-Western and a B-Western is how much money was spent on making the film. So the ones that kids would pay 25 cents or a quarter to go see on Saturday, every Saturday, it was before the era of television, so that's how you saw your cowboy heroes, and that would be like the Roy Rogers, Gene Autry. So there's silver screen on the fourth Sundays. A lot of good music came out of that. But anyway, so if I was doing a song, example of a Western song that was silver screen, I would choose a Dale Evans song, or a Roy Rogers song, or a Gene Autry song. One of the most famous is Riding Down the Canyon. That Gene Autry wrote this, he and his friend, Smiley Burnett, wrote this song, when they were on their very first trip to Hollywood to make the very first movie, and this is like 1934, so. When evening chores are over on our ranch house on the plain, and all I've got to do is lay around, I'll saddle up my pony and go riding down the trail to watch the desert sun go down. Riding down the canyon to watch the sun go down. A picture that no artist ever could paint. There's white-faced cattle lowing on the mountainside. I can hear a coyote howling for its mate. You always gotta have mooning coyotes in a good Western song. Cactus plants are blooming, sagebrush everywhere. Granite spires are standing all around. I tell you, boys, it's heaven to be riding down the trail to watch the desert sun go down.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
That's just one of many.
So if a person had an interest in singing Western music or reciting some cowboy poetry, or if a youngster wanted to come along to the Cowtown Opry, just what procedure?
What would they do?
Yeah, what would you do?
Well, okay, it's a program. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We do have a membership fee for kids, for families, or groups, or individuals. There's different amounts that a person would pay. If you want to be involved on a permanent basis. But the first time a person came, I don't even require an audition. It's not like you have to be perfect. What it is you have to be intrigued and willing to learn. So I provide a person with a whole list of a repertoire of each of the basic, some of the classic songs from each of those categories I just described, and I would give that to them via email and ask them to learn a song. Now they can Google the song to learn it. They could come to me for help. They could play an instrument or not play an instrument. They could sing. Or if they want to do poetry, we have cowboy poets, cowgirl poets in our organization. The kids would be under the tutelage of Judy James with the Buckaroo program. And if they're adults above 18 years old, then I am the one that would help to mentor them. And then I run those shows that are like 3 shows a month. But one of the shows is run by the kids. It's called the Buckaroos, and that's on second Sundays. So check in at cowtownopry.org for more information. Get in contact with any of us from the website. We have contact information. We're located in the Exchange Building at the Stockyards, and that's at, what did we say, 130 East Exchange?
131.
131
Exchange
East Exchange.
Avenue.
That's right.
So we're going to step away for a minute for a commercial break, and we'll be back in just a few.
It's the fierce women and the power of the men, working with their brothers till the working was done. That's why we remember. We're proud to remember the forgotten ones. Come along, boys, and listen to the tale. Let me tell you about the troubles of the old chiefs and Ride on it, yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi, die. You ever heard that song? That's an old cowboy song. The kind we teach on Countdown Opry.
Welcome back to History on the Bricks. Our special guest today is Wayne Ludwig. I'm sorry, I messed that up. He is the museum coordinator here at the Multicultural Western Heritage Museum, located here in the Stockyards of Fort Worth. So Wayne, tell us a little bit about the museum and your role here.
Well, I started as a volunteer probably 8 or 9 years ago here, and at the old building, and then we moved here a year, almost 2 years ago now. I do tours, do research, and provide information. Wrote up a script for a tour that we're going to start doing here whenever all the ducks get lined up properly. In fact, that's the script that was turned into a song by Evan.
We did in our last episode.
Forgotten one.
Yeah, Forgotten Ones, about the Forgotten Cowboy. And basically we try to tell people about the real history of the real people that built the American West. Not just the Hollywood version. We talk about folks like Bill Pickett, who's known as the father of the rodeo sport of bulldogging. We talk about the Tuskegee Airmen, the Buffalo Soldiers, the Buckley sisters, who were three ladies up in Montana that ran their own ranch and did their own work. And that's a whole story by itself.
Yeah.
So we try to correct the perceptions that people get from Hollywood and from the movies and TV shows of what the cowboy was. We all have that perception we get from those sources. And we try to take and correct those perceptions to what it was really like and what the people really were like and what they really did.
Okay. Well, as one of the many museums that's located here in the Stockyards, all of the museums have the same goal in mind, and that's to educate the public and to shine a light of the facts on the history that we celebrate so much here in Fort Worth. So if a person came to the museum here, what would give us a little idea of how you would take them around if you were giving them a tour?
Usually I give them the option of if they want to just wander around and take pictures and take their time, or if they like a tour. If I show them around, I might start off in our big room up front with Bill Pickett and tell them a little bit about Bill Pickett, how he quit school down in Williamson County, Texas, when he was in the 4th grade, I believe, and went to work full-time on a ranch. And this was in, this would have been the 1880 time frame. So he learned the cowboy, and he watched dogs working in the brush country, rounding up these wild cattle, and saw how the dogs grabbed the cattle by the lip and pulled them out of the brush. And at some point, as a teenager, at some point, the first guy saw a crawfish in a creek and thought, I wonder what that tastes like. Bill Pickett saw these dogs work, and at some point as a young teenager thought, I wonder if I can do that. And that's how he developed the idea to bulldog that steer, wrestle it to a standstill, reach around and bite it on the lip to immobilize it. And that's how he built his rodeo act. And that turned into the sport of bulldogging. So we talk about that.
And that's still part of rodeo today, but now they call it steer wrestling.
And they don't bite them on the lip.
They don't bite them on the lip. We have PETA all over them.
Yeah, that's true. So we basically start with Bill Pickett and then just work our way around the museum. And sometimes visitors have a particular area of interest, and so we try to address that and make sure they get all the questions answered before they leave. And hopefully provide them a pleasant and educational experience. And we also do group tours. We do programs for school groups. One year I got a phone call and asked if I could come down and do a tour for a group. And I said, sure. So I came down. This was at the old building. So I came down, met the group. But what they failed to tell me was it was a group of school teachers that was in town for a convention of some sort, or a meeting of some sort. And they were from all over the United States. So I had no clue that I was going to be speaking to a group of school teachers. So I really had to get it right. But it turns out that I was educating the teachers because they all had the Hollywood perception, the TV perception of what the Cowboys were like. So.
Can you expand just a little on what is the Hollywood perception as opposed to the real perception?
In a nutshell, with Hollywood, until recently, until say the last 10, 12 years or so, it was all white guys riding around, shooting up the countryside with their 6 guns, and rescuing a damsel in distress, or settling some kind of an argument, being called out into the street at high noon for a gunfight. And by the way, the holsters that you see them wearing, Marshall Dillon, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, all of those guys wear their 6 guns slung low on their hip. That holster rig was invented in 1920s. They didn't have those. So that's just an example of the Hollywood misperception.
That would have been very impractical.
Yeah, there was only a couple of documented face-to-face shootouts. And one of those happened outside the White Elephant Saloon right here in downtown Fort Worth. And
before there was a stockyard.
Before there was a stockyard.
Yeah.
In fact, the White Elephant Saloon was in the 300 block of Main Street.
That's right, it's downtown.
Yep, downtown. So those are the kinds of things that we talk about. When cowboys were on the trail, trailing a herd of cattle north to the Kansas markets or Missouri markets or wherever, they didn't have time to go riding around the countryside like you see on a wagon train or rawhide or any of those good old TV westerns. They didn't have time to get diverted and go look for trouble to settle. They had a herd to look after and they had a job to do. And so those are the kinds of things we talk about.
And if from what I've read, most of the cowboys on the cattle drive were very young men.
Yes.
And they were mainly African American and Hispanic.
Yes, there's no records, but some of the trail drivers later said that about 30 to 35% of the cowboys that went up the trails during those post-Civil War cattle drives were non-Anglo, we'll say that. Black, Hispanic, there was even a few Indians and Chinese, Oriental cowboys.
Wow.
Another thing that a lot of people don't know is that some of the more famous cattlemen that you might have heard of were actually slave owners. And this is where a lot of the black cowboys learned the cowboy trade as slaves. And then after emancipation, they continued with what they know, and now they got paid for it. And a lot of times these cowboys would continue working for the same families, working right alongside their owners, just like they did during the slave period, but now they were getting paid for it. And so that's how a lot of these guys learned the cowboy trade, and some of these black cowboys went on to become successful ranchers and livestock men in their own right.
So what are the hours?
The hours of the museum are generally noon to 4 o'clock. We may be open till 5 o'clock on Saturdays, Wednesdays through Saturdays. And outside of those, if you call the business office, then we can make some special arrangements if that's needed. We can also schedule groups, make arrangements for groups. Basically, whatever you'd like to do.
Sounds good. And is there an admission to your museum?
There is an admission fee. It is, I believe it's $10, $8 for seniors and students and teachers, And then we have further discounted rates based on the size of the group.
And I know from experience, it takes a lot of money to run a museum.
It does.
So we thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to say too, before we go, that we are a 501c3, and there's also opportunity for volunteer opportunities and other opportunities, along with donation opportunities.
And give us your website.
It is
Cowboys of Color?
cowboysofcolor.org.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the original name of the museum.
Look it up.
Well, there may be, you don't have two different websites, but that is the address of the museum. And then the Facebook page, I think, is under National
Multicultural Western Heritage
Right.
Museum on Facebook.
Yes.
Cowboysofcolor.org on the internet.
And don't forget that you can continue to watch History on the Bricks. It's filmed right here at the Stockyards Podcast Studio at 2029 North Main Street in Fort Worth, Texas. And you can catch the podcasts on
YouTube,
Jim Austin YouTube channel,
iTunes,
Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts, and on Facebook on History on the Bricks. Thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you.
The Fort Worth Stockyards, where the heritage is rich. Come join us for some history on the bricks.